First of all, why the Chainsaw Charlie gimmick and not Terry Funk?
This is just another great story. Okay. Cornette was pushing to bring Terry Funk back because Jim Cornette loves Terry Funk, as we all do. I love Terry Funk, man. As a matter of fact, in this show, I had to look it up. He does a moonsault. Not this one. Might have been the one before, but he did a moonsault off the top. I had to look it up. He was 54 years old at the time. And I was like, that's incredible to me. So everybody loves Terry Funk. Okay, so Jim Cornette was trying to get Terry Funk on the show. Listening to the conversation, I think there was some heat back in the history of Vince McMahon and Terry Funk. Whether it was over pay, because remember the Double Cross Ranch and all that.
He did his run here.
There was something there where like Vince didn't like jump at the chance to bring him in, right? So I remember Jim pitching, and this is a perfect example of where Vince and I was headed and where Jim was. And listen, I don't say this to rip Jim. If Jim were here, this is the story. Me and Vince are right in the Attitude Era. You know, Jim's still doing his Memphis stuff. And he wanted to bring in Terry Funk. So he suggested the idea of putting Terry Funk in a box and leaving him ringside the entire show. And people are wondering, you know, what's in the box, what's in the box. And I remember this like it was yesterday because you don't forget a quote like this. And this isn't like to poke fun. This is one of the greatest quotes of all time. Jim sat there and told me and Vince, anybody who comes out of a box is instantly over. And like we just have to, I mean, that's priceless. I mean, if I could make that up, I should be a Hollywood writer right now. So Vince took that, and for some reason, I think he wanted to take away from Jim that we're going to use Terry Funk. And I think, like I said, there may have been a back history where there was a little heat with Terry Funk. So Vince came up with the idea of, okay, we'll put him in a box, but it's not going to be Terry Funk that comes out. It's going to be Chainsaw Charlie. Now, Cornette was he could not even believe, Terry Funk is Jesus to Cornette, so he couldn't even believe Vince was suggesting this. I'm sitting there realizing I think this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, Chainsaw Charlie, but I'm also picking up the vibes from Vince and the stuff that he's saying that there's more here than meets the eye. You know, remember back in the day when Vince made Dusty come out in the yellow polka dots?
Sure, of course.
To me, it was like that kind of a moment. Right. So I really didn't say anything, thus Chainsaw Charlie.
Vince comes up with the name. He has the name Chainsaw Charlie ready and all that.
Yes. Yes.
And Terry goes along with it.
Well, if you notice, because I noticed this when I went back and watched, Terry goes along with it. But if you notice, during one of the live shows, at some point, Terry lifts up the stocking to show everybody it's him, and then he pulls it right back down. So it's like Vince was trying to get over on Terry, and Terry the professional was saying, you're not going to get over on me. Those are the little things like that. If you go back and you look at, you see these little things, and they mean a lot more today.
The bump into the dumpster. What's in the dumpster?
I got to tell you this, too. I'll tell you a couple of things. Well, first of all, if you look at it closely, because I just looked at it the other day, you could see it's lined with black plastic garbage bags. That's because underneath it on all sides and the bottom was protection. Right. Okay? But I could tell you this. This is another thing I remember. Very rarely would Vince really work with a talent. You know, I did a lot of that. I did a producing. This was a segment, if you go back and you look at these shows, the New Age Outlaws were just starting to get over, okay? And this was one of the segments, this one and I believe the following week, Vince was really hands-on with Billy and Road Dogg. He was out there producing this himself. And I think part of that too was, and again, when I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. When we were talking about, DX and everything, we were forming DX together, the idea was the NWO was kicking our backside at the time. Vince turned around and said to me, he goes, I don't understand it. He goes, we have the talent here, and they're a lot younger. Okay? So we already had China, Hunter, and Shawn as DX. And, you know, Vince said we need to, like, expand that group. And he came up with the idea of the New Age Outlaws. And he said, you know, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg Jesse James. And I got to be honest, I looked at him and I'm like, Vince, they were not over. Like, those guys were not over. And I said, Vince, I don't see that. I mean, you're talking about Hunter and Sean and China. And, you know, these guys were rockabilly, the roadie. I don't see that combination. But he goes, no, he saw it and he believed in it. And I think it was the fact that, like, I kind of told him I didn't think it would work, that I mean, he kind of made this his own. And he started producing those guys. I think this was the most that I ever saw Vince work with anybody. He really started producing Billy. He really started producing Road Dogg. So he had a lot involvement in those scenes.